Everyone, Justin Lyons, founder of Blaze, back for another micropod. Never mind if you're actually watching this on YouTube that there's an elf hanging onto my mic, but I had to get this done and I'm not touching that elf. I'd be in a lot of trouble not touching the elf. So for this micropod, I wanted to talk about two things that I heard in the news yesterday. And first one was, my friend's a Chicago police officer, and we were talking the other day about some of the crazy stuff that was happening. And one of it was I think it was a bank robbery that turned into a carjacking, that turned into a pursuit into the city, turned into the suspect running into a piano store, I think, where there's also lessons, and a shootout, and a young boy about 15 that was working there getting shot. And this was a follow-up story talking about how he had 7 different surgeries and he's finally out of the hospital. And then it went on to a priest that ran over 2 people, killing one of them. And it turns out this priest was, I guess they were all attending some Catholic school's event in the evening. And, he was charged with a DUI, not surprisingly. And it was a hit and run. So this retired priest, which I guess, I didn't know you could retire as a priest. I thought that was sort of like a permanent thing. But, this retired priest said he thought he hit a curb. How about that for taking accountability? So, but he ran over 2 educators. So this retired priest, coming from an event for the school, Catholic school, drank too much and ran over 2 of the educators responsible for educating our children, killing one of them, took off, and then said he thought he hit a curb. The first thing that hit me was, and then after all these stories, the newscaster says, "Hey, it looks like some sun's coming through the gray clouds. Fantastic. How's the weather, John?" And I was just like, man, why is it? Why is it that we are watching the news and it's just one bad thing after the other, and then we just go to the weather, the happy weather, and that's because we demand it. We will stop watching these things. Their statistics say if the tragedy doesn't show itself. So I don't want to get into that. I do want to just talk about the kid. So, we watch these stories and they fly by. I just want to pause for a minute and reflect. So you have a guy who tried to rob a bank, carjacked somebody, and I forgot he actually shot. They didn't say this on the news, but he actually shot at a cop pursuing him in the city and right through the windshield and hit the cop in the head. I don't know how he's doing, but what led this man to the point where he wanted to rob a bank? And did he go into this bank robbery with the thought, I'll kill anyone if I need to, meaning that he had really nothing to lose? Or did it just start to spiral on him and he panicked and he just couldn't accept the fact that he would have to pay the consequence? So he was willing to destroy any life to escape it. And he ended up shooting a cop in the head and a boy having 7 surgeries. The news makes it like, oh, fantastic. He's alive, stable. He's not in critical condition. Oh, he's going to survive. But we don't talk about how this boy's life has changed forever. We don't talk about how that cop's life has changed forever. We just keep moving on. And we can't dwell on that stuff, but it's just, I'll say this, if you have a loved one, if you have a child, we get caught up in our day-to-day. We move too fast. We have spats with one another. We have resentments. We hang on to nonsense. We put rules on one another. Spouses do it all the time. We do it to our kids. We create so many rules. Those rules become increasingly imperative to be followed, and it becomes increasingly unacceptable if they're broken, the more stressed we are and the more unhappy we are deep down. And I just gotta say, there's so much conflict that's unnecessary, and we just got to, that boy is working in a piano store. Good for him, that man. I don't know, that shot the cop in him. I don't know if he's got a daughter. I don't know if he's got a son. He had a mother or father. I don't know if they were around. It's just chaos sometimes, and I don't know other than, how do people get to the point where they've got nothing to lose and they do that? And if you think any of us are immune to reaching that state in life, you're wrong. And it just goes back to, finding a way to love and cherish our young people at a young age. And you take that man that shot up folks and led to all this tragedy, and you ask yourself, was he a shining light at some point? Because I see a lot of kids in K to 5 that are shining lights, but then I see their parents, or I see just some trends, and I worry for them. I recently had a child dropped off at my daughter's birthday party, and her mother was clearly, it just seemed like she had just gotten out of a box of marijuana smoke. It was strong. And when she picked her up, she smelled the same way. And I say, that's fine and dandy, smoke your marijuana when you're by yourself and you're not going to have the responsibility of a child. But, grow up. You're not 15 anymore. You have a child, and this child is a shining light. The child is a shining light, and it devastates me to think that these shining lights will be extinguished by those that should be caring and loving for them the most. So I think about that boy. He'll never be the same. 7 surgeries. Great, he's alive. I hope it turns into a massive positive for him. That cop, I hope he's okay. I hope that turns into a positive for him. The man that shot them up, I don't even know if he's alive. I don't know if they killed him or took him into custody. But, we could vilify him, or we could start to think about what was it that he, where did it go wrong for him? Because he was a first grader at one point. Where did it go wrong for him? And then when we see parents that aren't doing the right job, it's like, who's going to step up and say something? I didn't. I mean, it's a tough deal, but it's tragic. And let's go to the priest, right? So I was raised Catholic. I was an altar boy. I always heard weird things about priests. I was never, for the record, a victim, but here's a man of God. Drinks too much and runs over 2 teachers and wants to deny it and run from it. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's we got to be careful who we put up on a pedestal, and no matter what we've committed to our higher power, our vocation, whatever, it's if we've got a demon in us and we're not honest with it, and we think that we can push it under the rug, it'll eventually get us. It'll eventually get us if we're not right inside. And is this priest much different than that man that tried to rob that bank and carjacked and then ended up, permanently affecting 2 lives, innocent lives? I would venture to say no. Sure, he lived a life, of the church. He became a priest. He was probably revered by a lot of people. He was in a position of power and influence, but he clearly had some demons, and our demons can kill not just ourselves, but they can kill those around us. And it doesn't always have to be a shooting. It could be a car, or it could be extinguishing the life of the light of a child slowly and systematically over time by selfish acts, like thinking you need to get high just to take your kid to a party. So I think, you can take the extreme cases and say you're not them, but it's all those little things every single day. I think that, if we're on our phone and we haven't paid attention to our kids all day, if we are taking meetings in the evening when maybe they're really not that important, maybe when we're short with our kids because we're stressed and we're not giving them the patience they deserve. Those are all little acts for us as adults, as parents, that will slowly extinguish the light of a child. And it's all interconnected. I don't know. It's all interconnected. The priest, me, the carjacking guy, the cop who got shot, the boy who got shot, that mom, that girl at the party, we're all interconnected trying to figure out life. And I think that I don't know, I don't have the answer other than care enough to make yourself better, raise kids that want to make the world better, and occasionally have the courage to want to lift other people up, even if it isn't a popular thing to do or it may piss them off, because you might save a life. Peace.